The Queen thinks Prince Charles is fit to rule, despite the reports. Last few weeks there were many false reports of the royal family, one of which is particularly and logically incorrect. It was reported that Her Majesty the Queen decided to name grandson Prince William as a future king rather than her son, who is the first in the line to the throne, Prince Charles. It was said that the palace fears Prince Charles is unfit to be king and that crafty Queen Elizabeth and vengeful Princes William and Harry want to block him from ever becoming king. That couldn't be further from the truth, and there is evidence proving it wrong. First, one logical statement that this report is completely false is the fact that the British law clearly says that the first in the line is always to get a crown, and no one would succeed for their children or grandchildren to rule. The only time the child can rule in the name of the monarch is given by the rule of accession, which states that if the ruling monarch is incapable to rule, the next one in the line for the throne becomes regent. But under the Settlement Act of 1701, if there are any changes in succession, the Parliament will have to enact a new law. This means the throne goes to Prince Charles by law. Second, the Queen is the biggest supporter of Prince Charles and she is willing to see him rule. Even though there were reports which state that the Queen thinks Charles is going senile and is unfit to rule, her message for his 70th birthday declines all the reports. I have seen Charles become a great charitable leader, a dedicated and respected heir to the throne to stand comparison with any in history, said the Queen in her speech on Prince's 70th birthday party. Talking about Charles becoming 70, in the documentary Prince, Son and Heir, Charles at 70, his sons talked about their father with pride, calling him a hero with a big heart. This completely pushes aside all the reports which claim Prince William and Prince Harry are unwilling to see their father as the king. Prince Charles is worthy of being a king as he was the busiest royal last year, attending 546 engagements, which is significantly bigger than Prince William's engagement as he has visited only 117 events. There is no doubt the Queen supports her son as she thinks he is a respected heir to the throne to stand comparison with any in history. Hopefully, we will able to see him one day on the throne. Prince Charles's rambling letters to Tony Blair and other Labour ministers prove he is unfit to be king, MPs claimed today. In private correspondence, the heir to the throne lets rip at equipment shortages for troops, the spread of TB in cattle, and even the impact of European regulation on alternative medicines. Clarence House tonight defended the prince's right to private communication, while Tory MPs insisted the letters only showed he was a good man passionate about many issues that the British people care about. However, Republican MPs and pressure groups slammed the prince's meddling and claimed it undermined the role of the monarchy. The government was also under pressure tonight to reverse a law introduced in 2010, which stops any of Prince Charles's other letters being published. Campaign group Republic said the royal household should be subject to the same freedom of information rules as the government, allowing the thousands of other letters sent by the prince to be published. Paul Flynn, a Labour MP and member of the Commons Public Administration Committee, said the letters show Charles is unfit for the job of monarch. He called for a referendum on whether Charles or William should take over when the Queen dies. The prime qualification for a royal head of state is political impartiality, he said. Charles has proved himself to be the mouthpiece of sensible views, eccentric views, and balmy views. He is the most influential lobbyist in the land, and it's right that these letters were published so we, his future subjects, should know if he is fit to do the job. It is an outrage that the government spent £300,000 trying to suppress the truth from us. These letters show Charles's unsuitability for the role, as he lacks his mother's restraint in not speaking for 60 years on controversial issues. Seeing as we are not living in a medieval state, the public should have a say into who should be the head of state. Should it be Charles, or should it be William, who has the gift of his mother in remaining politically silent and inert? If the head of state is tainted by allegations of political bias, it makes him incapable of doing the job. He should have spent his life practicing to do the job correctly rather than in such a damaging way. It is a good thing that these letters have been published, and if it provides debate on the succession, that would be worthwhile. The anti-monarchy pressure group Republic said the letters show the need for full disclosure of all of the prince's correspondence with ministers. The group's head Graham Smith said today, The government must now act to end royal secrecy. Any risk to the monarchy from disclosure must pale against a risk to democracy from having an activist prince acting in secret. These letters are only a small indication of widespread lobbying that's been going on for years. We now need full disclosure and an assessment of his impact on government policy. We can't have a situation where we don't know what influence Charles is having on government policy. Michael Meacher, a former Labor Environment Secretary who received private letters from Charles, called for a new system of transparency around his correspondence with ministers when he becomes king to remove public suspicion from the process. He said, "A brief statement would be made the king has written to a minister and the subject would be obvious," he said. "At least we would know he has been giving his opinions and some would say lobbying ministers." But Michael Ellis, a Tory MP and constitutional expert, defended the prince's right to correspond with ministers in private. He said, "These letters show Charles as a good man. He is passionate about many issues that the British people care about, concerned for the welfare of the armed forces, and interested in the plight of the Patagonian toothfish. He cares, and we should applaud the fact. Instead of a dissolute heir to the throne who is into gambling and boozing, we have an heir who cares, and we can be proud of his involvement in national life. Even princes of Wales should be able to write private letters in my view, and the Supreme Court has been activist in ordering they be published." Denis McShane, Labour's former Europe minister, said the publication of the letters will make it harder for the prince to speak his mind honestly. He told BBC Radio 4's Today programme that when he received letters from the prince he thought, "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear." He said, "It was like a retired archbishop or university vice-chancellor. The problem with Prince Charles is he's almost retired before he's begun the job. I can honestly say the ones in the Foreign Office were regarded more as oddities and chuckle time, and of course we would send our best drafter to draft a reply from the Foreign Secretary, just as a letter from any high person, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the chief rabbi would get a very considered reply, but there was nothing shocking. I think the real worry for the government is no member of the royal family will ever dare to write a letter to the government again, and nobody in any position of status will ever dare write for fear their private views, bingo, will be front-page news. It reduces the interflow. The royal family are important. He's going to be head of state one day. I think he should be able to communicate with the government privately.